Welcome to the platform, ladies and gents. I have Chwayita Nqiwa Twalo. I hope I didn't butcher your name.
No,
That's
that was
right.
good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. No, my Tswana tongue, sometimes with Nguni languages, it messes it up. How are you doing today?
No, very good, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, you're doing some quite interesting work. But before we get to that, just tell us a bit about you, what you're all about. Yeah.
Okay. Basically, to be very clear with you, like I'm an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur,
Mm.
and but what my dad always said was, oh, just get some education behind you, and at least that will never expire, right? So I got my first degree and I was like, oh, I think I'm ready to, hit the streets running. I just want to, build something. And he further again said, maybe you should get like an honors, so that you can have a bit of, something much better than a bachelor's. And I thought, okay, cool. It's just another year. Let me get an honors, right? And then I was like, okay, I got my honors within that year. And then it was basically, again, okay, great. Now I'm just going to start. And then it was like to me, you know what? It's very important to actually work, you know? So he kept putting these delays, right? But they were also staggered. So I never really knew what the end would be. So he was like, get some work. There's certain things that you need to understand about the work environment. You need to understand people better, particularly in that space, because this will better equip you to, just be able to build something yourself because you're coming from a workplace and you've experienced that. So I ended up working for a number of years, and then my dad was like, okay, cool. I'm like ready. I think I've got everything in order. And my dad was like, before you do your own thing, maybe you should get yourself a master's. Right. And then and then this is where the protest came, right? I was like, Dad, you've been delaying me, it's been years. And my mother always just stands next to him silently because they've agreed, he's just the one that relays the messages because he's such a great communicator, right? So when he communicates with you, I promise you 3 months later you'll be like, you will think that what he said to you was actually your idea, right? He's an incredible communicator. So eventually I started in business, and it was not easy. It was very difficult. And within a year, so I didn't do my master's. I told my dad, let me try this. Let me just do this, And I worked for about, I left work, and I went into business, building my own niche PR agency with this particular focus on technology. And I promise you, I was not ready. I had to first do a couple of more things. And those things were to ensure that I've got a network, I've got people that understand my services. They understand my skill set. They understand the expertise that I engage with when I am, when I'm developing a strategy for a client, and the level of depth that I go into. So that was that. And then I thought to myself after about a year and a half, you know what, let me just go back. I know what the issues are, I know where the gaps are, right? Let me go tick those boxes, and then let me do this again. I'm young, it's not going to disappear. I will always become the entrepreneur that I want to become, right? And this led to, then I did my master's as well. And then in 2012, I went back at it. And I promise you, my husband always talks about preparedness. And he always talks about, in order to get opportunities, you first have to be prepared, because you don't know when it will come. So whenever it comes, you need to be able to meet it very well, right? And that's literally the steps that I took. And in 2012, I quit my job. I had no plan B. I just thought, this is I'm going to do it now, And 2 weeks time, I won't lie to you, it took me 2 weeks. And there was a lot of international accelerators, incubators, angel investors coming into the country, wanting to invest in startup businesses. And I happened to, meet some incredible people from Estonia and they gave me my biggest opportunity ever, right?
Mm,
And when they grew outside of South Africa and went back to Kenya, I was still doing the public relations and marketing. And when they moved to Nigeria, I was still the one that they trusted with the public relations, and marketing. And the beauty of, you working well with people and over delivering on the actual expectations, it means you can build longer relationships with them. But it also means that they will tell, everyone else from where they're coming from that, if you want to build something in Africa, if you want to work in, markets outside of South Africa and gather more than that, people start speaking. And then, they told, some guys from the UK who were launching here, and they were not launching here. They wanted some PR done for them in Kenya, and they also wanted some PR done for them in Nigeria. And they reached out and they're like, oh, we heard about you from, these guys, and they were impressed with your work. And then it just kept going. So it's literally, that preparedness and, having those skills of actually having had a job, and working in an industry and perfecting your skill. I think those two together, you can be incredibly dangerous as a human being.
Okay, so you would definitely recommend that any entrepreneur needs to first get education and get like the corporate experience before venturing out on their own.
Well, with the experience, I mean, the education, it differs, right? My parents just love education and they want us all to be educated. My dad has a PhD. So with them pushing education, that was personal gratification on their end, and it also gave me, but it also gives you these ticks that it ticks certain boxes of respect from people when you actually are educated. I'm not going to lie. When you speak to people and you say you have a master's degree, that works in your advantage than saying, no, I dropped out. I mean, we're not in Europe. We're not in America. It's not cool to be a dropout and then make millions. I mean, how many millionaires can we count in our regions that are dropouts, right? It's always this cute startup American story. I don't know. We live in a very different environment, and I think that, opportunities are not as close, and we're not, I'm not a young white man, so I'm a Black woman in Africa. So for me, opportunities are a little different maybe than a young white man with no education who loves to tell the story if I dropped out, So you have to look at your surroundings and your environment, and that's what you should base everything that you have on.
I've noticed that in Kenya, there's a lot of tech startups and a lot of funding that goes there. And I'm always curious, like, Kenya is like, because, being South African, you'll assume, but we are the ones, that are making things happen in the continent. What is it about Kenya and technology, and why is everybody, from around the world always putting money in Kenya?
Yeah, I can tell you right now, a few friends of mine are actually in Kenya right now, and they were talking about it's so robust, right? Startups are very enthusiastic. If you're hosting an event, people will flock to your event to hear about what it is that you're talking about in startups, what sort of, funding you're bringing across, or, whatever it is, people always come. And to give you a very clear example of the fact that it's so robust, when I met my first client 10 years ago, they said the reason they were looking for startup businesses, right? But they just gotten a handful of applications from South Africa. But then, I told them, man, guys, this is South Africa, and this is Cape Town particularly. So therefore, people need to read about you in particular media in order for them to believe that what you're saying is legitimate and your offering is real. And they were like, oh no, but in Kenya, it just grew word of mouth. We've never done public relations, right? In Kenya, we had over 400 applications without saying anything to anyone, And I was like, we need to understand that regions are very, very different. Because that arrived in South Africa, it was very quiet for them. They had a handful of applications. And once we started conducting in public relations and, and branding and just, creating a share of voice for them within the market, that's when things really, really picked up, and they had, I think it was also over 400 applications from South African businesses nationally. So, I'll always respect the power of marketing, but I also
Mm,
think that people in Kenya and, startups in Kenya are incredibly excited, robust. They've got interesting ideas and they're keen to learn, and they just always throw themselves out there
mm,
to ensure that they can meet that opportunity. I think that here we're a little bit more relaxed, to
mm,
some degree, you know, and we kind of expect a lot. And I
mm,
assume that also has to do with our background as a country,
mm,
of like incredible suffering for such a long time and being promised that, things will change, the tide will change. But of course, the tide can never change to the point that things are given to you. We still have to,
mm.
strive and work hard and ensure that we number one, get to certain spaces, but also retaining, right? And sustaining is also an important aspect of it all.
Okay, interesting. Wow, I'm learning a lot from you. Thank you so much.
I'm glad.
Now, let's get back to you. What is the hatchery?
Okay, so the hatchery was founded by Jon Barmer, an incredible man, an inventor. He's based out in Norway. He's based out in Oslo. Again, my European connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even connections per se. It's just that people knowing people that I've worked with, and then people then they meet me and they know that they can build me. So Jan Balmer founded the hatchery. He's an entrepreneur. He's been in business for many, many years, decades, in fact. And about 2 years ago, he sold and listed a business. And this allowed for him to, fulfill his dream of building the hatchery. He's got about, 20 other businesses that he'd love to build. But he also understood that he had to create a space for them in which they can thrive, a space for them in which they can really, really flourish. And as we know with statistics and everything else, incubation is a great way to go about things
Mm,
because it means that a business can be supported. It means that a business can have, business services that allow them to thrive and allows the founder to focus on the bigger goal, which
mhm,
is, making, creating a great business, but not just that, but getting to a stage of profitability.
mm,
So Jon founded it, a year ago. He launched Oslo in January. And then I launched Cape Town, South Africa in April last year. And then in March last year, we launched Detroit in the States. And then
mhm,
in May, we were all in Barcelona, launching our office in Barcelona. So the hatchery is simply a space built for businesses to thrive and to literally strive and to be supported, well guided, and also, introduced to opportunities as well. So we ensure that, the startups that we work with, it's not just about building them up, but it's also about giving them access to opportunity and
mm,
market access. Because sometimes you can build up a business, but you don't have the relationships or the network to introduce them, to particular entities or corporates or organizations that actually need the solutions that they are currently building. So
mm.
that's what the hatch, yeah.
Okay. And finally, tell me about the HatchTWO event. What is the HatchTWO event?
Okay. So the HatchTWO event is basically an opportunity for all our global offices
Mm-hmm.
to host an event on one day and one evening. It would be evening for us, but it would be morning for Detroit,
Mm,
where we showcase our startups, the innovations that we are working on. John always gives like a keynote and an address, introducing the new innovations that we've been working on. And then, the mic will come over to Cape Town, where I will lead that conversation with interviewing the startups that we have at play. Same thing with Barcelona, same thing with Detroit. So it's generally a space where we can invite our, advisors, our stakeholders, our key partners, and key, strategic partners that we've got in the different markets, for them to come and see that, guys, this is what we're doing. And the beauty of the hatchery, it's just to prove that just because you join our office in Cape Town does not mean that you're limited to Cape Town. If your
mm,
market, if your product has got a market opportunity in Europe, you can access Europe through Norway, or you can access Europe through Barcelona, where we've got offices. And if your solution is got access and market in the US, then our office, which is run by Mike, talk to Mike. I'll say, Mike, we've got this incredible startup. We believe that he's got, potential to access the US markets. And that's where the conversation, begins. But what I can tell you is that, with every single startup that we work with within the hatchery, we all, Mike knows what I'm working on in Africa. I know what he's working on in the US. We know what the guys are working on and working with, in Europe. So we're incredibly collaborative to ensure that we always know exactly who can we put into a different market, because they also can, gain some of that audience and some of that market size. So it's important for us to build an incubation and to build, an incubator that has no boundaries, because technology has no boundaries, right? We are using technology and apps that have been built in places we've never been, but we're using them. You've got someone in the depth of Khayelitsha using a Facebook app that was, built in the US, which they've never been in. So we believe in technology not having, any barriers, and we need to ensure that we try and do our absolute best to build something that has, market and global access.
So if I'm understanding you correct, you are saying that basically your focus is assisting African startups that focus on tech innovations.
Yes, and particularly clean tech businesses. Because one of our key bases or key values is ensuring that we stick to the UN's SDG goals, right? Because we are eradicating Earth in the quickest way possible. Pollution, litter, all of these things, right? Food is not growing as it used to grow. Our grandmothers always say, oh, my garden used to, the potatoes used to be so massive, right? And because of environmental factors and, the quality of the soil degrading, it means that the quality of what is coming out from that earth is very different from what used to come out of that earth. So we're just ensuring that we assist innovators and entrepreneurs who are building businesses that have impact. They are technology based, but they also will have an impact, and a positive impact on the planet, and a positive impact on at least decelerating the rate in which climate change is happening.
Okay. Wow. Interesting work that you're doing there. Thank you so much for your time. I don't want to keep it for too long. But yeah, okay, like last question. Have you come across any interesting startups in South Africa that you think, we should look out for, that are going to take over the world someday, hopefully?
Absolutely. I think that the time now is absolutely incredible. It's so interesting. Everything is everyone is being so innovative. And I can talk to one startup that, we've got a number of startups in the pipeline and startups that we work with, but Pulse. It's an incredible startup, because what it does, how it's very interesting. I was actually watching the news this morning, and also it was just like another tick of how relevant this business actually is. People have been receiving, what do you call it? They statements from Eskom, right? Saying that they owe Eskom 30,000 Rand, right? And then people are like, but how? It's been load shedding. I'm using absolutely way less electricity or energy as I've ever used. This is like the biggest year of load shedding. It's the biggest year of the quantity of downtime with energy that we've had. And people are saying, I don't understand, how does this work, right? So what Eskom and what they do is that they do estimations, right? Based on your previous use, maybe over the past 12 years. They will then estimate, last year, this month, you used this much, therefore your statement is this much, right? It's never a realistic, explanation of actually what electricity actually left your meter, if I can put it in that manner. So what these guys do, they are building smart meters, which can do way more accurate readings, right? It means that then the statement you should be getting should be way clearer than the statement that you're getting. It should be more real time. It should be more realistic, and it should be based absolutely on the actual usage that you've done. So with regards to this startup Pulse, I think that they are definitely gonna, take over in a really big way. I don't necessarily think in Europe per se, because they're far ahead of us with regards to, that level of service from government or government parastatals. But also in Kenya, one of the founders is Kenyan. And, the issues in Kenya and some of the issues in South Africa, they mirror each other. So where they would work with Eskom here, they would work with Kenya Power, which is KPLC on their end. So, some of the businesses are not just for South Africa, but they're African solutions by African startups.
Okay, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
the insights. And yeah, I think a lot of people are gonna, learn a thing or two about what you do and what to look out for. Thank you so much for your time, ne? We really
Thank you for your
appreciate it.
time. Thank
All
you. I
right.
appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay, enjoy your
Bye.
day. Bye.
I didn't catch your name. You're probably gonna edit that, right?
Oh yeah, my name is Andile.
Andile, you never said.
Oh, my bad.
And I kept thinking as I'm talking to you, instead of me saying, Andile, this, that. I was like, man, I don't think he told me his name.
Yeah. No, my name is Andile.
Lovely to meet you. Okay, awesome. So you one of the writers on the web